Welcome to a special edition of the Economic War Room. We're here at Liberty University. They've been so gracious to open up their studio and let us film the Economic War Room here. Amazing guests. We're at the National Association of Christian Lawmakers meeting, and I ran into dear friend Dr. Jim Garlow, and I welcome him back to the Economic War Room.
Thank you. Good to be with you, my friend.
Man, I'm excited. We're going to talk about your new book, Reversed. We're going to talk about Israel. We're going to talk about Trump. We're going to talk about so many things that are happening in the world today. But one of them that I especially want to start with is the World Health Organization. You just came back from Geneva.
Correct.
And you've got a report. Tell us what you learned there. Did we win? Did we lose? Are we doomed? Are we saved? Where are we?
It wasn't the victory we wanted, but it wasn't the defeat it could have been for us. Bottom line, they have, for the last 2.5 years, tried to get through a treaty involving all the nations of the earth, a pandemic treaty, just so people understand what that means. It means that anytime there's a pandemic, we effectively lose our national sovereignty of all 193 nations, member nations.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just pandemic. They said actually any health crisis.
The pandemic is defined by them,
yeah.
and that means climate change, which is a perma-crisis, guns,
right.
An infodemic. An infodemic is if you have misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation based on what they say is all three of those. So in other words, we're in a permanent pandemic. So at that point, the General Secretary Tedros takes control of the world and dictates what has to happen in each country. Now, they had a treaty. In the case of the United States, if we have a treaty, it has to be passed by 2/3 of the Senate. Biden bypassed that, said, no, it's just an agreement. It's not a treaty. Therefore, we'll ignore that. Ron Johnson rose up, got 49 senators to come out against it. 22 attorneys general, 25 governors have stood against it so far. They failed to pass the treaty as such, but in a sense, it was kind of a red herring because they wanted to get through IHRs, it's International Health Regulations, 317 amendments. I don't know how many they actually got through, but they got through a bunch, and they're all bad, and they're all dangerous. And they take Kevin Freeman's electronic footprint, everything there is to know about you, everything, and it's controlled through one world government. They did get that passed. We have about 10 months to up to as much as 18 months to try to get countries to reject it. There was never a vote. Amazing, never a vote. It was all by consensus.
Yeah, consensus when half the room was absent, too, if I understood correctly.
And the Biden administration, according to reports we heard, was telling people, if you come out against this, we'll cut off all foreign aid from you, all military help. So small nations, they can't say anything.
Well, and China was on the same side, too, right? China and the Biden administration, so it's almost impossible for a smaller nation to object.
Precisely. There were a few nations that raised tepid questions, but nobody really sounded an objection because it was very difficult. And some heads of state in some countries didn't even know this was going on. So they had representatives from their country there that supposedly signed off for their nation. So it is very convoluted, illegal because they were, by their own rules, they had to submit all the amendments 4 months minimal before the vote. The vote was starting on May 27th. They should have submitted them by January 27th. They didn't give them out to about 4 minutes before they voted.
So here's the economic impact. It is everything we saw in COVID, masked up, 6 feet apart, where there was no science behind it. Even Fauci's admitted that. But all of those draconian economic regulations could be given to a foreign entity, the World Health Organization, that's run by a Marxist, put there by the Chinese Communist Party, Tedros, right?
It's totalitarian authoritarianism at its worst. Read the book of Revelation, one world government. That is precisely what it is. We still have a window to try to get this slowed down. I would like to say stopped. If Trump were to come back in, he has said he'll tear up the papers. Which I would assume he would do. And then there's a few months that still it's actually in operation, technically, as I understand it. So we have to put forth a lot of effort and get nations to say we refuse to be a part of it. Now it's not a case of opt-in. You have to opt out if you're not going to do it.
And you have to give notice to opt out. They haven't followed their own requirements for notice, but they will enforce a requirement to opt out, that you have to give a certain amount of notice. We talked to Reggie Littlejohn about this and Frank Gaffney beforehand, but it's great to get the report of what actually happened because it was very confusing. Was it a win? Was it a loss? It was something in between.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so let's switch topics.
By the way, there were great rallies. There were rallies outdoors, and there were marches in the street against it in opposition. So there's a
in Geneva?
Oh, yeah, we were part of that.
Oh,
There
excellent.
was a 3-hour rally outdoors with about 100 speakers, about a minute each. They were very, very short. And then we marched through the streets, thousands strong, from many, many different countries, saying we don't want any part of this. So people are waking up and realize how crisis this moment is.
Yeah, in fact, in Europe, we're seeing more than just a few of those. It's the farmers banding together and others, just a big pushback on the whole world overarching government, one world government.
The Canadian truckers pushback and the European farmers, I'm convinced those are moves of God to come against this rabid totalitarianism that's crushing the human spirit.
Well, I appreciate the report on that. We've got some other issues, though, around the world, because it's not just the United Nations. We've got a war in Ukraine, but we also have the issue of Israel. And I know that's near and dear to your and your wife Rosemary's heart is Israel. Tell us quickly, we've got a break in a couple of minutes, but tell us what you've learned from Israel and what things we ought to be praying about and doing here in America.
My wife's been to Israel 76 times. She's really the expert, and I've been there 25 times. We just got back from there. We had 21 days there, I think, this last trip. I'll tell you two things. One is the country is in trauma, and number two, the country is resilient. They're pressing forward. I'm an extrovert, so as we went everywhere, I started conversations with everybody I could, hundreds of people, just to strike up a conversation so I could work this phrase in by the third sentence, and that is, we are standing with you. Millions of us are standing with you. And almost every person said, we feel so alone. While we were there, Spain recognized Palestine. While we were there, Ireland recognized Palestine. Norway, the ICC in The Hague came out against Israel. The ICJ in The Hague came out against it. All in the short span of time we were in Israel. All these attacks constantly upon this one nation. And before we went on the air, United Nations just came out with another condemnation of Israel again. Call them a nation that kills babies. I mean, that's how ludicrous it is. So people would oftentimes start crying and say, we feel so alone. But positively, they are resilient. By the way, you should go to Israel. Everybody should go to Israel. It's completely safe. We were there 21 days. We never felt at all any insecurity, any threatened in any way in terms of safety, that people had to go and support. Everybody said, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. They're going forward. And God's going to protect this nation, but it's been through a tremendous amount of trauma and pain.
I appreciate your perspective. We're going to have to take a break. But when we come back, I want to talk about some other things. I want to talk about Israel from a little bit different perspective, college campuses here, what the American people are saying about Israel, and these nations going against it, and how we can really stand up with Israel. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com. We're at Liberty University at the National Association of Christian Lawmakers Conference. I ran into my good friend, Dr. Jim Garlow. We're talking about Israel. Give us an update.
On Israel, the most recent thing that relates to America on these college campuses, which doesn't get told, and that is that whereas there are students that are participating in these pro-Hamas rallies, the survey now shows that 50% of them are not students at that university. We certainly know they're paid. There's about 7 or 8 organizations now been identified that have been funding them. But what is not oftentimes told is all the pro-Israel events that are now taking place across the country in response. A huge one was in Nashville just recently, about 2 weeks ago. And then on those same campuses, thanks to Janet Folger Porter, planes have been flying over those campuses with strong banners saying Jewish lives matter, or God loves Israel, or Israel forever, or we love Israel. At Harvard, USC, Columbia, University of Texas, University of Michigan during their graduation. Nobody's reporting those kind of things taking place. There's a rising up. Now, it took us a while, admittedly, to do it. It took us a while, but simply 83% of Americans are still standing rock solid with Israel.
83%.
Yes.
Fantastic.
I believe that one was a Harvard poll, I think. I need to confirm that.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the case. You have a terrorist group, known terrorist group, identified by the U.S. government as a terrorist group, invading, killing, massacring people, and somehow they've had some media ability to try and turn that around like Israel's the bad guy. And that's happening not just, on these college campuses with these paid provocateurs, going in. Fortunately, not here at Liberty, ever.
Absolutely.
But then you have these criminal court activities. Explain those. International
Criminal Court is in The Hague. The Hague is the name of a city in the Netherlands. Then there's the International Court of Justice, which has 15 justices in what's called the Peace Palace or the Temple of Peace. That one is under the United Nations. Now, in both of them, they're separate entities. President Trump got us out as a nation out of ICC, the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court has now indicted Benjamin Netanyahu, among other people, and to be arrested for war crimes. They're charging him with genocide, if you can imagine this. Now, we just came from the site of the Nova Festival where 365 young adults were gunned down. We just came from one of the kibbutzim there in the south where they just went through and just slaughtered everybody. We just came there. We just met with one of the security police officers that was at the Nova Festival who saved the lives of about 200 people miraculously. And we just came from meeting with a guy with Zaka. Zaka is the organization that goes in and tries to identify body parts. And he described what was done to these people. It's really pretty hard to take. And in spite of all that was done to Israel by these violent individuals, this terrorist group, still the International Criminal Court, taking a case from South Africa, a third party can make a charge against another nation, charged Israel with all these violations and found them guilty in the midst of all of this. So one of our good friends in the Netherlands, a strong believer, is putting together an event called The Trial to defend Israel there. That'll be taking place July 2 and 3 and 4 actually, and called The Trial. They can Google that. We're going to be taking some people over there. We're going ourselves to try to make a stand spiritually against the evil of what the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice have done against Israel.
That is lawfare at a whole nother degree. I mean, we're seeing it here in the United States. We saw 34 counts, felony counts brought against a former president, something that's unprecedented, never happened. It's really one count 34 times based on really questionable law, turning a misdemeanor into a felony and all of that, where the star witness is a convicted felon himself and a known perjurer who's admitted perjury. You've got all of those things going on. It seems like they're taking out Benjamin Netanyahu, Donald Trump. They're taking out leaders one by one using this lawfare approach.
Here we go nation by nation. It is continuing. We see what's done to hire Bolsonaro in Brazil. Mm-hmm. We see what was done with Janine Áñez in Bolivia. We had the privilege of meeting with both of them in times past, and now Janine Áñez is in prison. And it's even an indefinite prison term. Don't even know how long she's going to be in there. The socialists came back in control, threw her in prison for completely trumped up charges. And so country by country, anywhere you go, that's precisely what is happening. This is a global, demonic attack upon anything that has to do with any kind of Judeo-Christian value structures at all.
Yeah, as we're talking, I called former Congressman Dave Bratt. I think he's the vice provost here at Liberty. I was talking to him, and he said, yeah, I was on Steve Bannon's show yesterday, and all of a sudden Steve Bannon gets a text. It says, you have to report to prison. He says, I've got to go up, and he had, I guess, meet with his lawyers or something. He left Steve as the host of the show. He says, you're hosting now. I mean, it is across. They're going after Epoch Times. They're going after Alex Jones and his InfoWars. They're going after Steve Bannon and his war room. It's
Peter Navarro.
Peter Navarro. But media, it doesn't matter. They're going and using lawfare. How do you think the American people will respond to this?
Well, so far, their eyes are being opened. I pray that continues. Every time they do these sham charges against Trump, the result is they just assure his inauguration. That's assuming we have an honest election. So every time so far, the American people are responding in the right way. I pray they will continue.
Well, they're giving money. We've seen a couple of $100 million or something added to the Trump coffers. He was way behind, and now miraculously, from his perspective at least, he's caught up.
And Steve Bannon's is like 4 months, I think, imprisonment and a $6,500 fine or so. And it's a report by July 1st to this. They know no mercy.
4 months for Steve Bannon starting July 1st. Gosh, add 4 months to July and you're hitting November. In other words, they're silencing Steve Bannon in the 4 months running up to the election. That's unreal. It's so obvious, too.
In Israel, they tried to warn us over and over. Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this. The president, Isaac Herzog, said this to a group of us last week. He says, we're taking on the evil ones first to try to keep you from having to deal with this.
I think it's escaped. It's coming here now.
Yes. And they're not going to stop with Trump and Bannon and Peter Navarro and Epoch Times, et cetera.
They never do. French Revolution, they eventually get around to even the ones that thought they were allies.
Precisely. And what that means for you and me and the people listening to this show right now?
Yeah, no, and Trump has always said that. He said, they're not after me, they're after you. I just stand in between.
And he's absolutely correct.
Yeah, so it's going to take a societal turnaround. It's going to take a reversal of all of these nasty societal trends. And, we're going to need to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk about your new book, Reversed, From Culturally Woke to Biblically Awake. This book has a prescription for how we can turn America back to the land we love.
Oh, hi, I'm Kevin Freeman, and I'm here to tell you about coffee. Well, not really, but I'm going to use coffee to illustrate my point. Here we have several different coffees, each with its own unique characteristics. First, we have instant coffee. This coffee pretends to be coffee, but it's not really coffee at all. It's a fraud. Plus, it tastes terrible. I'm out. Next, we have woke coffee. Their coffee actually tastes pretty good, until you find out that when you drink it, you have to admit that you've oppressed other coffees in the past. Insanity. I'm out. Next, we have Big Tech coffee. Now, these guys used to encourage folks to share with others what they thought about their coffee. But now, if you say you don't like Big Tech coffee, they'll take away your coffee pot. I'm out. This brings us to Patriot Mobile Coffee, right? This is one big cup of truth and freedom. There's no fraud here. Patriot Mobile is America's real Christian conservative wireless provider. Patriot Mobile gives back millions of dollars every year to organizations that are on the front lines fighting for our freedoms. Patriot Mobile offers the best nationwide 4G and 5G coverage on the same networks as the other major carriers. So you'll get the same great coverage, along with 100% US-based customer support, while knowing you are supporting a company that shares your conservative values. Switch to Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
We're talking with Dr. Jim Garlow here at Liberty University as a part of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers meeting. It's a beautiful campus. It's a beautiful time to be here at Liberty. And Dr. Garlow wrote the book Well Versed, which is, a manual for all the issues of the day. But he's got a new book. It's titled Reversed. Why'd you title it Reversed?
Because the subtitle tells it, from culturally woke to biblically awake. By the way, I didn't come up with that. I put it on a question on Facebook. I said, here's what I'm trying to write about. Help me come up with a title. And hundreds responded, and 3 of them suggested this title. I said, that's it.
I love it.
That's it. Reverse. We're trying to go back to biblical values.
Yeah, you got Governor Huckabee on here. It says an encyclopedia of the biblical foundation of nearly 60 political topics. You know, the first thing I did was I flipped through and I looked for the pirate money in there, and you've got a whole section on gold and silver and fiat currencies and central bank digital currencies. I mean, all the things we talk about, but 15-minute cities, big pharma, authoritarianism and totalitarianism, anti-Semitism we've just been talking about, and the attacks on Israel and Netanyahu, abortion, sex trafficking. It's just an amazing summary of all of the fronts that we are fighting on culturally.
In 2016, I wrote the book, as you alluded to, called Well Versed, and I laid out the biblical foundations of 30 political topics. But a lot has happened since 2016. A whole lot of sins have emerged. And so we expanded this. We cover almost 60 different topics: ESG, DEI, AI, BLM, CRT, reparations. We have homosexuality and transgenderism in there. We have even video screen addiction, transhumanism. And so it's about 60 different topics, and it's the biblical foundations to each one of these topics. The book is 500 pages, wow. So it's a big one.
Yeah.
It sells for $27, but I want to offer it to people. I'll drop the price all the way down to $5 a book if they'll buy a case. A case is 20 books. And they can go to reversed.org, just reversed.org. And the price, and with the shipping, it comes to like $1 or something more per book. So about like $6 a book. But I want to get these out because I'm asking God for a miracle. This is the big one. I'm asking, Lord, will you help me affect the next election, even if it's just move the needle a tiny amount, to get people to think biblically when they think political or governmental. They'll think biblically. They'll take Jesus into the voting booth. So that's what I'm asking the Lord for. So I'd ask people to order this in cases of 20. Get this to their friends as quickly as they can.
Give us a sample. Pick a topic, any one of your favorite topics. Pick a topic and explain how it is dealt with in reverse.
Okay, let's take the topic of marriage, because that's an issue in every country, the destruction of the definition of marriage. In there I go to Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, and I lay out in the Hebrew words in the chapters Genesis 1 and 2, literally they make the case for why marriage is what it is. Why does God care so much about that? Why is the enemy attacking marriage in every country? Why the rise in everything that attacks marriage, whether it be no-fault divorce or pornography, or whether it be adultery, or whether it be the issue of homosexuality, transgenderism? Why this attack on one institution, the institution of marriage? If they will walk through that one chapter, it's worth the price of the book for that one chapter. I lay out from the Hebrew text in Genesis 1 and 2 the power of marriage and why it's so important to God. That alone is worth the price.
Well, I read it this morning. The name for God, it includes both the male and the female.
Yes. Yeah, in the very nature of the word for male and female, as they come together as one, Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, the name for God is written upon a man and a woman coming together in the covenantal relationship of marriage. Two men don't do that. Two women don't do that. The very image of God is on it. And I've got diagrams in that chapter. You apparently read it, so you know about it.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned that the Bible begins with marriage and it ends with marriage. Explain that.
Yeah, it starts, the opening pages of Genesis is the issue of a man and a woman being married. And it closes in Revelation with the marriage of a bride and a groom. It's such a big deal to God. I go into an explanation of Revelation, why the bride and the groom, why that is so important. We don't have 20 minutes to go into that right now. The opening word of the Bible in the Hebrew Bible is Bereshit. That's in the Hebrew. Bereshit translated into English, in the beginning. But in there I make the case for how that word is constructed. It actually literally is a declaration of the sacredness of the institution of covenantal marriage. This was taught to me by 3 different Jewish rabbis. Wow. The opening word, Bereshit, in the beginning, is a declaration of the power of wedding, of marriage, the God ordained. And that's why in every country of the world, the enemy is attacking marriage, because it's at the heart of who God is, the institution, the sacredness of marriage.
It's almost as if, and I think you made this case very strongly here, as if a man and a woman together, a man by himself doesn't necessarily reflect the full image of God. A woman doesn't reflect the full image of God, but together they reflect the image of
That's
God.
precise. Boy, you read well. You got it down. That's exactly right. When a man and woman come together, again, you got to go to the Hebrew, and not just in the English, in the Hebrew. Then you have the name of God that is stamped on it. One of the names for God, for example, is El Shaddai. El, mighty, strong like a mountain. Shaddai, a breast that nourishes a newborn baby. Even the name of God is a depiction of the full spectrum of the image of God. No man by himself does all that. No woman by herself does all that. And in the original creation process, people think God created Adam, took a rib and created Eve. That's not the way the Hebrew reads. God created Adam, which is humankind. So he created, don't think male Adam, he created Adam, humankind. The word in the Hebrew, he took not rib, it's translated every other place as side or half. God created Adam. It's the only time he said that's not good. What's not good? He's created something without the capacity for relationship. So he looks at that and says, that's not good. And then he removes side or half. Now we have woman and we have man. And that accounts for the sexual attraction is the desire of man and woman to come back together to represent the full image of God.
Wow. And you cover marriage, you cover a lot of issues in here. The ones that interest me, of course, would be national debt and personal debt, then what is money, population growth, borders, social credit scores, ESG, the things we talk about all the time here, the one world government, Second Amendment, self-defense, technology, all these. It's an incredible book, and I strongly recommend that you get a copy of this book. Where can we get learn
Once
more?
again, it's biblical foundations to every one of these issues. And it's reversed.org. Reversed.org. If you buy one book, I'll make it difficult for you. You're going to have to pay $27. But if you'll buy a case of 20, or even a case, even 10, half a case, we'll drop that price to $5 a book plus shipping and handling, and get that out to as many friends as you possibly can.
All right, we're going to summarize this in our free economic battle plan. You can get your copy at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.